Welcome intellectuals. So in our today's video we are going to introduce carbohydrates. Okay, this is going to be the part 1 to carbohydrates. Okay, in this video you're going to cover the introduction, the functional groups. We're going to talk more about carbohydrates, classifications. Also at the end you're going to do some exam questions together. All right, so the first thing here, I will be just giving you key points which you need to know about carbohydrates, because Bio 1 is bulk. So if you don't study it smartly, you're going to find it stressful. Okay, so the one thing you need to know is about the elements that make up carbohydrates. Okay, so carbohydrates, guys, these are compounds. Okay, these are compounds made of elements, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So these are elements that make up carbohydrates. Okay, the other thing, another important thing you need to know about carbohydrates is it has a general, okay, it has a general molecular formula. Okay, molecular, so see there, molecular formula. Okay, molecular formula. This is the general, it has a general molecular formula of Cn, H2N, then O-N there. What does this mean? It means that the number of hydrogen is twice the number of both carbon and oxygen. So if oxygen and carbon, we have two carbons there, that means hydrogen will be 4, because 2N means 2 times the number of what? The number of carbons or oxygen there. So it will be 2 times 2, which is actually 4. So what does the value of N mean? What does N means in this formula? Okay, N means the number, okay, the number of carbons, the number of carbons, the number of carbons in the what? In the compound there. Okay, so all carbohydrates are in this form. Okay, this can also be written as, since N is common everywhere, we can factor it out, and you are going to have CH2O, then N outside there. It can also be written in this form or in this form. It is one and the same. Okay, what else do you need to know about carbohydrates? All carbohydrates are made up of two functional groups. These things, guys, are very important. I know you were telling me that you are finding difficulties to understand the carbohydrates. Alright, it's one that the lecture slides are very bulk, and they just include everything. Now here I'll be just selecting parts which will be asked. So a functional group, guys, this is just the part of a compound which determines the chemical characteristics of a compound. So it determines, okay, this determines the chemical characteristics of a compound. I'm trying to define what a functional group is. So whole carbohydrates are made up of two functional groups. Okay, are made up of two functional groups there. Okay, and these two, we have the carbonyl group. Okay, the carbonyl group, say the carbonyl group there, which is written as this. Okay, also the hydroxyl group. These are the two. Also the hydroxyl, you need to know this, guys, the hydroxyl group there, the hydroxyl group. which is written like this. Okay, so these are some of the things you need to know about the functional groups of carbohydrates. But a carbonyl group also, there is an important part about a carbonyl group. Okay, okay. So a carbonyl group may exist as an aldehyde. Okay, let me talk about a carbonyl group now specifically. So a carbonyl group may exist as an aldehyde. Some of the things which you guys got confused: an aldehyde and a ketone. It can exist in these two forms. Okay, it can exist in these two forms. So when is a carbonyl group called an aldehyde? So if we have a carbon there, if we have a carbon chain, we have a compound there, and we have a carbonyl group on the first carbon. Okay, on the first carbon, it is going to be called an aldehyde. Okay, it is going to be called an aldehyde. You need to understand this. Okay, when is a carbonyl group called a ketone? Okay, it is called a ketone if it is on any other carbon rather than the first carbon there. So if it is on this, okay, more especially in fructose, we are going to understand that in the next video when we'll be talking specifically about monosaccharides. So if a carbonyl group is on the first carbon, it is called an aldehyde. Okay, and those carbohydrates with an aldehyde carbonyl are called aldose sugar. Aldose sugar. Naming of compounds are not difficult. Ald is coming from aldehyde, and hose is a prefix of all carbohydrates. Okay, we are going to be saying this. Now, compounds with a ketose there, I mean a ketone. When we have a ketone there, a carbonyl is only the carbon rather than the first carbon. It is going to be called the ketose sugar. Okay, we are using sugar there because all carbohydrates are what? Are sugars. This is what you need to understand about aldehyde and ketose. Very important, you'll be asked. Okay, you'll be asked on this. I'm emphasizing. So the two functional groups, we have a carbonyl group and hydroxyl group. But the special about carbonyl group is that it may be an aldehyde or a ketone. Okay, it is an aldehyde when it is at the first carbon. The opposite of that, it is a ketone. Compounds whose carbonyl is at the first are called aldose sugar. Okay, and those where it is at the other position rather than the first there, it is called the ketose sugar there. This is what you need to understand, guys. What else you need to know? Okay, another important thing you need to know about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates exist in two forms. Okay, the carbohydrate may exist in L or G form there. These are some of the nature of carbohydrates. So carbohydrates naturally exist in form of L or G form, and it is likely to be asked, what does this mean? Okay, how can you determine if a carbohydrate is in L or G form? Okay, sometimes you may be asked, you'll be given a compound and you'll be asked to say what is the compound. Okay, I'll be just using small carbon chain there. Okay, let me just say here, I'm just interested on this carbon. Okay, I'm just interested on this. Okay, I'm just interested on this. Yeah, we must have an whole head. Okay, let me draw also another one. Let's say we have C1, C2, C3, C4 there. This is carbon 4. We have have the OH there, have H and H here. Okay, here let's have our whole 8 here, and here we just have 80. All right, now here we are going to have our 8 here, and 8 is going to be here there. Okay, now I want you to see clearly. I want to explain something. How can you know that a carbohydrate is in G or L form? Okay, so now we are going to go to a carbon next to the what? To the terminal carbon. What is a terminal carbon, guys? So let me even write a comment here. Okay, you're going to consider, okay, consider the position of hydroxyl group on the carbon chain, on the carbon preceding, let me use the term preceding to the terminal carbon, preceding to the terminal carbon there. Okay, to the terminal carbon. All right, guys, so this is the something you shouldn't forget there. Okay, all right, so now look at this, guys, look at this. So what you are actually doing is that we are going to consider a carbon which is next to the preceding carbon. I mean, which is next to the terminal carbon. A terminal carbon is a carbon which is at the end of the chain. So in this case, the terminal carbon is carbon 4, even here is carbon 4. So the preceding carbon, the carbon which is next to this carbon is a C3. So it is where now we are going to consider the position. Okay, we are going to consider the position of an hydroxyl group. So now the one thing you need to know is this. Okay, one thing you need to know is this. A compound is said to be in hell form if the hydroxyl group is on the left side. The hydroxyl group on the preceding carbon to the terminal carbon is on the left side, it is in hell form. And the opposite of this, it is what? It is the G form carbon. So if we have our hydroxyl group, let's consider this compound, okay, compound A there. Okay, so in this case, our terminal carbon is this one. This is our terminal carbon. So we are going to go to the preceding carbon, which is C3. Okay, we are going to consider the position of hydroxyl group. And the hydroxyl group, as you can see, it is on the light side. Okay, it is on the light side. And because it is on the light side, you are going to call this carbon to be in a G form. Very important thing, guys, we are going to meet. All right, let's go to this one. How can we know that this is a G or L carbon? We consider first, we look for the terminal carbon, which is C. Say for it is a terminal carbon. But we are going to consider the what? The preceding carbon, the next carbon to the terminal carbon, which is actually carbon 3. Alright, so now since we look at the carbon 3, we are going to consider now the position of hydroxyl group at the carbon next to the terminal carbon. So as you can see, this carbon, this hydroxyl is on the left, and because it's on the left, this compound B can be said to be in hell form. You guys, you need to know this. I always emphasize what you're going to meet in your exams. All right, what else do you need to know about carbohydrates? Okay, so carbohydrates, guys, I've got a number of functions. I'll just state about some there. So carbohydrates are used. In fact, I can give you even two here. You can't be asked a number of questions from functions, and you guys know the function. So carbohydrates are used as a source of energy. Okay, source of energy. So if you take in food like rice, we got cassava, we got breads, and those are and more energy giving food. You are going to have energy even if you were feeling weak. Okay, so it is used as a source of energy, but it is also stores energy. Okay, it is also stores energy. So here is what happens. So when you heat, okay, some carbohydrates are not going to be used directly. There are some excess carbohydrates. Okay, this excess energy, because once you eat carbohydrates, carbohydrates are going to be converted into ATP, but not all of that is going to be used. Okay, some is going to be converted now in a stored form. Okay, are going to be converted in a glycogen there, in a glycogen. Okay, so this glycogen will be a storage form of energy, which is going to be used in terms of need. When you lack energy, you're going to feel some sort of energy even if you haven't eaten anything. It's because the energy which is stored has now been converted back in the what, in the used form. Okay, what other functions of carbohydrates can we actually talk about? Carbohydrates are mainly used as building blocks. Okay, are building blocks for other what, for other macromolecules. Okay, these are building blocks. So building blocks there. Okay, so there are more about carbohydrates which you need to know. Some are even talked about during cells, on cells, where carbohydrates are used for recognition there. Okay, they are used for recognition. Okay, so there are a lot about which you need to know about the function of carbohydrates. I'll just talk about this. Okay, the other part is about classes of carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are classified in four classes. The first, we have what we call monosaccharides. Monosaccharides there. Okay, we also have what we call disaccharides. You need to know, guys, this disaccharides. We have oligosaccharides. Oligosaccharides and the polysaccharides there. I know from primary, or let me just say from high school, you only learned about 1, 2, and 3. The aspect of oligosaccharide actually was skipped, but here you are going to learn about it, and you shouldn't just ignore it. Okay, so what are actually monosaccharides? Here I'll be just giving a brief explanation, okay, because these are going to be talked about it in each video there. So there are still 4 more videos which we are going to talk about, more especially monosaccharide. It will be a long video because this acts as building blocks to all these to all these kinds of carbohydrates. Okay, and they are very bulk. Monosaccharides are very bulk. So what you need to know about monosaccharides: monosaccharide, from the word mono means single, so they are made up of 1 unit of sugar. Okay, they are made up of 1 unit of sugar. What about di? Because it means, what you need to know, guys, saccharides means sugar. Okay, saccharides means sugar, and this means single or 1. That's why this is made up of 1 sugar, single sugar. What about di means 2? So it is made of 2 units of sugar there. 2 units of sugar. What else do you need to know? What about oligosaccharides? Oligosaccharides are made up of units of 3 to 10 units of sugar. 3 to 10 units of sugar. What this means, guys? We have monosaccharides as building blocks here. So 2 monomers of monosaccharides there make up disaccharides. Now if we combine 3 of these to 10, we make up oligosaccharides, and 10 and above, okay, 10 and above make up polysaccharides. This is what you just need to understand about classes of carbohydrates. But also these are broadly classified into two. Okay, I can say that carbohydrates are broadly classified into two. Okay, where we are going to have first, we are going to have what we call simple sugars. Simple sugars. Sugars which have just one unit. This includes monosaccharides there. Okay, includes monosaccharides there. Okay, don't mind my handwriting. All right, now the other part is the other classification is complex sugars. Okay, carbohydrates are classified in complex sugars. Now this includes the sugars from two monomers up to infinity. I can just say up to infinity. You can add as many as possible. So this includes disaccharides and oligosaccharides and polysaccharides there. So it includes this. It includes this. My pen is is skipping a bit there. Okay, I'm sure you have seen what I'm actually pointing. I'm pointing at these two are what are part of the what complex sugars. So now, since you now understand this, let's go ahead and do some exam questions. You see how questions come. Okay, which elements are primarily found in carbohydrates? This is what I was actually talking about. Carbohydrates are made up of elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So this is our correct answer. What is the general chemical formula of carbohydrates? Actually, you all understand that carbohydrates are in this form. Okay, so our answer is actually no other than B. Which functional groups are characteristics of carbohydrates? Okay, now you see how questions come. They bring all functional groups which you guys rent on functional groups. So don't get confused. The functional groups for carbohydrates is actually carbonyl and hydroxyl group. Okay, and hydroxyl group there. Okay, now question 4. In carbohydrates, the carbonyl group can exist as what? Okay, so the carbonyl group, this is what I was actually talking about, that we have two functional groups, but carbonyl group has a special part which exists as an aldehyde or ketone. Okay, it exists as an aldehyde or ketone, where I talked about. So when it is on the first carbon, it is called an aldehyde, and if it is not on the first carbon, it is on another carbon rather than the first carbon, it is called a ketone. All right, so now let's go ahead and talk about question 5. A sugar with a carbonyl group at the end of the carbon chain is called what? Okay, let me read it again. A sugar with a carbonyl group at the end of the carbon chain is called what? Okay, this is what I'm saying. If it is at the end, okay, it is at the end here. The carbon, it is at the first carbon chain there. It is at the first carbon chain. Okay, it is called an aldose sugar, because this kind of a carbonyl group is called an aldehyde. An aldehyde, yes, I think it is spelled like this, an aldehyde. So from the word out, we take out there. Okay, out, and carbohydrates, the prefix is OSE there, so it becomes an aldose sugar. All these kind of carbohydrates are called aldose sugar. Okay, so this is our answer. All right, now question C. A sugar with a carbonyl group within the carbon chain is known as what? Okay, now if a carbonyl group is within the carbon chain, guys, it is within the carbon chain. It is not at the first or at the end. It is actually the ketose sugar there. It is called the ketose sugar. This is what I was actually talking about there. Okay, the functional group, the position is the ketone. It is called ketone when it is within, but the carbohydrate is going to be called the ketose there. Exam questions, guys, you are going to tell me that you find these questions in your tests and exams. Okay, now The G and L forms of carbohydrates are determined by the orientation of the hydroxyl group on the what. Okay, I was saying that to determine if a carbohydrate is in a G or L form, okay, what you need to do is to consider the carbon proceeding to the terminal carbon. Okay, the carbon proceeding to the what? To the terminal carbon. Okay, this is what I was actually talking about. The terminal carbon is the carbon which is at the end of the chain. Now the carbon which is next to it is the what? Is the what? The kilocarbon proceeding to the what? And you consider the position. Now what I can just add, we just consider the position of hydroxyl group. If it is to the right, it is in G form, and the opposite of it, it is what? The L form carbohydrate. Question 8. Naturally occurring sugars in living organisms are mostly in which form? So in most carbohydrates, you need to know that most carbohydrates are in G form, and you are going to understand this when we start doing monosaccharides. Okay, when we are going to do the structures, the opening and close the structures of glucose, fructose, and galactose. And you guys should you don't need to miss that video, because the things you are going to find in your exams, tests, and quizzes. Okay, which of the following is not an importance of carbohydrates? Okay, carbohydrate is used as source of energy. It is unimportant. Structural support, it is unimportant. Genetic information storage, it is not unimportant here. Carbohydrates are not used for that, but for cell recognition, moisture in cell membrane, as I was talking about. So our correct answer is this. So the good part about the MCQs, so from here you can even remember to say that these are the functions of carbohydrates. You even know them. Okay, the last but not the least, carbohydrates act as recognition molecules on cell surfaces. Many are in the form of this is I think I also talked about those you guys who watch the videos on cytology. I talked about carbohydrates which acts as recognition molecules in form of glycoproteins and glycolipids. Why glycoproteins there and glycolipids? I said on the cell membrane, guys, on the cell membrane, carbohydrates are attached to proteins. Okay, they are attached to proteins and lipids. Carbohydrates which are attached to proteins are called the glycoproteins, and those that are attached to lipids are called the glycolipids. Okay, glycolipids there. This is what it means. Alright, so this is where we hint on this part of carbohydrates, a very important part which you shouldn't miss, covering in all concepts which you need to know about carbohydrates are going to come in your exam. So don't forget, guys, I've seen you are failing to like the video. Like the video so that it may reach other audience. You share. I'm sure you guys are subscribed, but if it's your first time to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. You also hit that notification button there so that you may be notified about new uploaded videos. So thank you for watching. We are going to see and meet each other in the next video.